All right, thanks for jumping on, everybody. It's about 3 after. We'll let people continue to come in, but I'll go ahead and get started. So we will be talking about all the features we released this past month. So that was November 7th was our release. And we've got quite a bit of stuff to talk about. I'm going to span quite a few different areas of the system. So here's kind of the 8 or 9 features we're going to chat about. The only one that would require any configuration or discussion would be the school staff setup enhancements, which I've marked with a little asterisk there. And we'll see that in great detail. I'll actually kind of click through and point out the component that would require some minor configuration on our end. But obviously, as usual, with any of these, we're always available to help with questions, walkthroughs, things like that. So I'm going to start with some pretty straightforward things. First of which being the promotion completion update. So for those that do run promotions, you're probably familiar with how that ends currently. And for those that aren't familiar with promotions or don't run them themselves, the promotion is really the act of moving profiles from one PID or set to another. So moving somebody from a student's PID to an alumni, or a first-year PID to a second-year PID. That process is called promoting. And upon the end of the promotion before this release, you would be taken back to the settings page, which is where you indicate how you want the profile or profiles to be promoted. Or now, once the promotion has been completed, you will land on a separate page. And here's a little screenshot on the right-hand side that just summarizes how many profiles had been promoted in a continue button. So no longer will you revert to the settings page and be unclear on, okay, did it process correctly? Do I have to redo this? And it just caused some unclarity at the end for the previous process. So now we definitely confirm that, give you the list of, or the total number of profiles that have been promoted, and then a simple continue button to continue and move on. Next is going to be in our career tracker module. And for those that aren't familiar with this, it's essentially a way for administrators to build templates of tasks or to-do lists for their students. And each of the templates can be assigned to a certain population of students based on program or class year, major. Any type of profile criteria could be used as eligibility, right? Who's going to get this list of tasks, things to do in the system? But one quick update we did here was the ability to have instructional text underneath the section header of each section of tasks. So your task can be kind of bucketed into these different sections, like week 1, do this, week 2, do this, so on and so forth. But within each section, just to be able to give some additional context to that section, some instructions, we included a full HTML instruction box. So obviously that allows for all the formatting that you're used to, bolding, italics, images, hyperlinks, all that fun stuff. Next, we're going to pivot over to the student's activity log. And so when you're on a student profile, alumni profile, any student or candidate profile, there is an activity tab. And within that tab, that would show you a record of a lot of transactional activity within the system, whether they signed up for an advising appointment or attended an event, applied to a job. But also contained within that are emails, both single emails, so a one-to-one email, or batch emails where that student was a recipient as part of a larger group of emails. So the one thing we added here, indicated by the arrow, is a subject line. So previously, it would just say general standard batch email, mail sent to, and the student's email address. And then on the right-hand side, there's a little clipboard icon, and that's where you can still click there to see the full body of the email. But that's normally what you had to do to track down the specific email you may have been looking for, where now we display the subject line in that row just to make it easier to identify an email that you might be scanning that list to confirm that the student did receive that email. This next one's going to be a pretty big time saver, especially for those who have many PIDs within their system. So we normally see that more so on the graduate school side, but a lot of undergraduate community colleges, coding academies, our full kind of scope of clients will benefit from this as well. And this is the ability to save an email template. So this is one of the system email templates and be able to save any updates across all of your PIDs in the system. And currently there's quite a few email templates that are PID specific. And here on the left, you can see how I kind of help you define what those are at a glance. So PID specific emails, not only will they prompt you to select a PID when you are editing the template, but they're also indicated by this little blue eye icon in both the active and default columns. And those are both indications of this template is something that can be unique per PID. Doesn't necessarily have to be, but the messages are kind of broken out at a PID level. And so previously, if let's say I made an update to an email template for my current full-time second-year class, and I wanted those updates to also be applied to the template that's for the first-year class and my executive MBAs, let's say, and my alumni, all these different populations, these different PIDs, before this update, you'd have to basically do those updates and replicate them for each PID. Where now, if you make an update on a PID-specific template, once you save that template, it's going to take you to this page where you're able to handpick the different PIDs that you'd want your updates copied to, or you can easily select all and hit copy, and it would update every PID with that same template. So it seems pretty simple on the surface, but I think for those that run into this often, you're going to find this as quite a big time saver. I've already benefited from this just in the last week or so since it's been around. So no configuration here. This is just automatic. So the next time you go to edit an email template that is PID specific, you'll notice the screen. Obviously, if you just want that change to be unique to the PID that you selected, you can just basically ignore this page and cancel out of it. And that would just retain your changes for only that PID that you selected initially and not necessarily copy it over to other PIDs. Next is primarily for our experiential learning module, also known as co-op module, internship module. Goes under a lot of different names, but a core piece of functionality within that module is the concept of external surveys or evaluations, which works with our SurveyMonkey integration. And the update here is that when you go to assign a survey, whether that's at the semester level or an individual co-op or internship record level, that list of surveys available will be alpha sorted by default. Previously, the sort order was somewhat randomized based on a database query. So anytime you went to load that, since it's pulling these surveys in, kind of reflecting what you had built in SurveyMonkey, there was a database query that would go retrieve those. And so that would kind of randomize the sort order every time you went to pull one of these surveys and put it in its place. So now they're always going to be alpha sorted by default. So for our larger co-op internship programs, you're going to find this super helpful to not have to kind of poke around and scan for specific surveys, especially if they're named very similarly, but maybe have a specific indication for the semester or the type of student, like a major or program. It's going to be much easier to find now. Outside of the co-op and internship module, that SurveyMonkey integration still exists and allows you to send surveys directly to students and or recruiters individually or in mass. And that's the second screenshot down here where it says survey to send. That's an example of a pop-up email where you can attach a survey and send that to an individual or group of students or recruiters outside of that co-op and internship module. So that list has also been alpha sorted. So essentially everywhere where you would access your list of surveys built through SurveyMonkey and kind of integrated in with our system, that list would now be alpha sorted. This is a new company status. A lot of you may have already noticed this. I believe it was scripted on by way of the release. So as of Monday the 7th, you most likely had saw this new company status at the bottom of the list named blocked. And there were a couple reasons for this feature. And so I'll kind of touch on a couple use cases here. But the gist of how this works is if a company status is blocked, every recruiter associated with that company will no longer be able to refresh or copy any of their existing postings, and they will also not be able to create any new postings. So it's really truly a way to just block that company, any recruiter associated with that company with one status from doing anything related to job postings. And so the kind of two angles there, one would be maybe a company came in off the street and posted a job and you're like, this looks kind of fishy. I'm going to, inactivate or decline this posting, but I also want to just block this company because it seems either it's a scam attempt, just a little too fishy, whatever the use case is. It just gives you a quick way to say, yo, this company's blocked. Nobody against this company as a recruiter can do anything with jobs. And so that's kind of one angle from an organic side where they're coming directly into your system. Another angle is for multi-post. And so for those that do take part of our multi-post system, which is the idea that I'm a recruiter, I can go to school A, and when I post a job there, I get presented with a list of other partner schools that we work with, and I can choose other schools as destinations. So maybe I post at school A and I choose school C, E, and G as destination schools to share this posting. So I'm really posting it once, but I'm choosing to have that delivered to multiple schools. So multi-post is a very common thing, very popular thing, very nice way to organically share postings. But there's some situations where the postings just may not be relevant to your students. A good example would be an engineering school that I work with gets some great jobs from our other engineering schools where their employers post there, choose to share to this other engineering school, and they just kind of network that way. Whereas maybe they get a multi-post job for a preschool teacher, and it's just never going to be relevant to their engineering students. So they can choose to block that company, and that would actually prevent any of their future multi-post jobs from coming through. So while they didn't organically post directly to that school who blocked them, they chose that school when creating that posting. But moving forward, if I block that company, their future multi-posts jobs, even if they chose my school again as a destination, would no longer come through. They wouldn't clog up my job file. I wouldn't have to worry about reviewing and declining them because I just know that no kind of teaching position, at least in this capacity, in this example, is going to be relevant to my engineering students. All of that said, part of our process has always been and will continue to be to vet each multi-post job before we allow it to flow down to those destination schools. So we always take an eye on it and check multiple things, make sure they're valid email addresses and that the company's legitimate. It's not, any type of potential scam, anything like that. But obviously you guys always have the final say, whether it's approving that individual posting or continuing to let that company, continue to post and share jobs with you. So again, we'll kind of act as the middleman a little bit, just as a first glance, and spot check a couple things and do our due diligence before we deliver the posting down to you. You have the final say in approving that. Again, if you block a company, that multi-post would never come through regardless in the future. Okay, so a couple more items here. This next one is a pretty big one as well, has already come in handy quite a bit for me personally, a few of my schools as well. This is activity-based searching for recruiters. So we actually did this type of functionality for students about a year ago-ish, off the top of my head. So for those that are familiar with this, for students, it was the ability to search against your student database, their profiles, and say, show me all the students who have applied to a job within this time frame, or have attended an advising appointment, or went to a workshop, or have just logged into the system. A lot of different parameters based on their engagement and activity within the system. And I think it was a pretty big hit, became very helpful. And so we decided to kind of replicate that functionality on the employer side. And similar to the blocked company status, these new activity filters that are kind of highlighted here in the middle of the page were automatically included at every school in the recruiter basic search. So if you've gone to search your recruiter database at any time since the 7th of this month, you've probably noticed these. And this is the full list: company events, job postings, logins, requests, which are requests for events or interviews, and then visits. Visits are also actual interviews. Some schools may call them something different. So that's the full list. And we did our best to only put the activity filters at each school that were relevant based on the actual activity that they had in the system. So if you just don't handle interviews through your system with us, we didn't put the visits filter on there. Obviously we can, but we just, assumed it's not going to be relevant to you at this point if there's no interview data or records in the system. But those 5 there that are listed are the full options that you have for searching on activity. And there's a couple use cases on how this is helpful. I put it here at the bottom left is not only can you just simply find who has done what in the system, right? Which of your recruiters have done any of these things within the system at whatever time frame that you specify. You can do that to communicate with them and say, oh, well, I'm going to search and see all the recruiters who attended our fall career fair, and I want to send them an email or invite them to our spring one. Whatever the case is, you can communicate with recruiters based on this search criteria and really focus on those who are engaging, or do the opposite and focus on those who haven't logged in since a specific date or haven't posted a job since a specific date, and communicate with them that way. Another example is just keeping your recruiter statuses updated. So for, I have active recruiters, inactive recruiters, all of your different recruiter statuses that you handle. This is a really good way to just try to keep that current. Example would be, I just want to find all the recruiters who haven't logged in the last 3 years, haven't posted a job in the last 3 years, haven't attended an event in the last 3 years, and I want to make them inactive. And again, that just helps you keep your active records focused on those recruiters that are actually engaging with you. But really the sky's the limit. You can play with these filters as much as you want. And I'm sure there's many other use cases on why or how you could use something like this. So hopefully that's helpful. Again, everybody should have that on by default. If for some reason you go to search your recruiter file or your contact file and you don't see these, just let us know, but they should be there. And this is school staff setup enhancements. I'm actually going to walk through some of this live in our beta environment, but wanted to talk through it real quick here. So this is the notion of setting up your school staff profiles and admin login accounts. And school staff profiles, for those familiar, are going to be kind of separate than your just a general admin login account. Like, okay, here's my admin, here's who can log into the system. Those admin could or could not also have a staff profile. And staff profiles are mainly there to classify your advisors or coaches, your co-op and internship managers, your company account managers. So there's a purpose for them to have a staff profile. And then there's also a need to link their admin login account to that staff profile. So the system knows when they log in, okay, this is the advisor, Aaron, and I know it's him because his admin account is linked to this. So it's very, there's a lot of important reasons to have a staff profile, especially one associated with admin login. We all know the importance of an admin login. That's just the ability to get into the system and do what you need to do. But we've kind of revised the workflow on how to create these because it had you going back and forth through a couple pages, had you kind of choosing some confusing permissions, like what should they be able to do, what shouldn't they be able to do. And we kind of tried to simplify that. So that was the idea behind this. And I'm going to jump into our beta environment now and just kind of walk you through. So previously, just a little context, additional context, is prior to the 7th, what you would normally do if, let's say I have a new coach or a new company account manager or a new co-op and internship manager, a new staff in general, I need to get them an admin account to the system. And then I need to get them a staff profile to set them up as an advisor, co-op account manager or co-op and internship manager, company account manager, whatever. So what I would normally do is first I would go to manage users, and that's going to be where all of my admin users are, right? Their usernames, their emails. I would come in here and I would say, okay, I'm going to add a user, go through this process. Here's their username, here's their email. I'm going to set a dummy password. And then you have this big list of permission groups. And these, are normally named somewhat consistently with the area of the system, right? Employment reporting, document library, company recruiters, candidates or students, advising. But some of them can get pretty tricky, especially as more permission groups are created. It can just become a little bit of a longer list, a little trickier to kind of navigate and figure out what do I need to give them. And then products are basically PIDs. So it's like, okay, do they need access to just students, or students and alumni, or my full-time MBAs, or my executive MBAs, or both. So you kind of had to make all these choices when setting up an admin account. And then from there, once you did all that, then you had to go to your staff setup and say, well, now I need to create a staff profile for them. So I would add a staff profile, fill out their first name, last name, put their email address in here, say, okay, well, are they an advisor for advising appointments? Are they a point person for a workshop? Go through this whole form. And so that's been the previous workflow. You kind of had to go in 2 different places, and then at the end of it, you'd kind of link them all together and you'd be done. Well, now the revised workflow is you can essentially go straight to the staff setup page. I'm just going to add a dummy staff. So I bypass manage users. I'm coming here first. So I'm just going to say, this is my new staff. His name is Aaron. It's active. I'm just going to kind of blow through these required fields just for the sake of demonstration. Give an email here. What else do I need to answer? There we go. I think that's it. We'll see. Okay, so now there's a new pop-up that says, hey, do you want to add a login for this account? This was not previously here. And so this is your new shortcut. So if I hit yes, it's going to take me to a page that's very similar to manage users. It's going to let me set up an admin login account for them. If I hit no, I can always do that later. And I'll show you what doing it later entails. But I'm going to hit yes for now. And so it's going to take me to this page, again, very similar to that manage users page. But I have some new options here, one of which I can attach an existing login. So I can say, well, okay, I created Aaron's staff profile. I think he's already got an admin login account. I'm not sure, but I have the ability to look at all of my admin accounts that are not currently linked to a staff profile and just handpick one if I want and attach it. So that saves me a lot of work. I'm not creating one. I'm just attaching this staff to an existing login account. My other option is, okay, they don't exist already as an admin, so I need to create that. So I'm creating it here. So you still have your username, password, email, but you have a new option down here for assigning those permissions and what PIDs they get access to, and that is a user access type and template. Excuse me. So we have a couple options here. First is, do I want to use a template? And I'm going to explain templates because this is a big time saver. And then custom access. Custom access basically opens up what we saw back in managed users, where I'm handpicking permission groups and I'm handpicking products or PIDs. And I'm going to have to do this every time. Again, over time, I might forget what permissions need to go to what type of staff, and it's just kind of cumbersome, a little tricky to do. So there's a new concept of templates. And for this one, I can say, well, I'm going to use a template, and here's my staff access template. When I save it, they're good. They have an admin account, and they already have a staff account because we did that first. So I'm going to hold that page open because I want to talk about how to set up these user access templates. And this is where that configuration note from the agenda slide on this in the beginning came into play, is that A, we need to turn on this menu for you and make sure we give this ability to the right staff in your office. And B, we want to make sure that we can help you create these templates if there's any questions or lack of clarity around what permissions you should be giving people or want to give people. So again, once this is configured, you'll have a new page for user access templates. I'm going to create a new one just as an example, and I'm going to say, well, these are for my career coaches. So anybody who's a career coach that I set up as a staff, when I create their login, I want to give them this career coach access template. And so what I'm doing here is saying, okay, my career coaches get these permissions and these PIDs, and I can save it. And so instead of having to manually grant permission to all these different permission groups and PIDs or products every time, I can create this template, name it however I want. And anytime I go to set up a career coach now, I can just choose to give them that template, and they're going to get these permissions and access to these PIDs by default. So it's again, a big time saver, especially if you have a larger group of staff or people coming in and out. If you handle contractors, they may be coming in per year or multiple times a year, and you're always kind of in that staff setup, setting up new coaches, new company account managers, and kind of juggling all these permissions. I think this setup is really going to help. So again, the process of going straight to the staff setup, creating a staff profile and being prompted to create a login during that process is on by default. The only part that would need very minor configuration and some help if you need it from us is enabling this user access templates menu. And again, if you need help just saying, hey, I want to set up a template for my coaches, can you remind me what permissions my other coaches have, or let me know what permissions may be best for them. If that thought comes into your mind, A, we're obviously always able to help, but B, another thing you could do is go to your users under manage users. And what I would do is just look for somebody who's already a career coach that has the appropriate access, and you can click on their name. So let's say I'm going to pick on Daryl and say, well, Daryl's one of my coaches. I know that when he logs into the system, he's got the right stuff. So I can just go and see what permissions and what products does Daryl have. And I'm going to use that as my template, right? So now I can go create my template and just kind of mirror it off of Daryl's account, because I know he's already an established career coach with this login, and I know he's got the right access. So again, we're happy to help, but I would use that as kind of a little hint guide, if you will, if you have a staff person that already has the right access and you want to kind of create a new user access template based on their permissions and products. Okay, let me jump back here. Last thing is a couple updates to our AI job match, also known as text kernel. In the early phases, about a year, coming up on a year ago, when we started kind of going down the path of researching and developing this, but our new AI job match, newer, have some updates to that. So the top section is the one that came out on the 7th, and that is just splitting. There was one initial search box that acted as a catch-all for like keyword, position title, location. We kind of split those out to where it's more akin to kind of common job search boards, where you have your one text box for like a position title, location, keyword, and then a separate box for location. And so that's what was done on the 7th, is splitting out these boxes. But then I wanted to give you a heads up on a couple of things that are coming up here over the next month or so, either the December or into the January, maybe even February release, just depending on what we get done, obviously with the holidays coming up and people having time off. But there's a couple of things that we are going to do that I think are going to be much beneficial to the user experience and kind of the design of the job search. And I do have some screenshots in here, but our CTO actually came over and said, hey, some of that stuff's in beta if you want to kind of show it off. So I'm going to go back into beta and just kind of show you some of the new stuff. So first, I'm in as a student. I'm on the main AI job match search page, and I have my two search boxes broken out. This is kind of my position title, keyword, kind of generic search box, and then my location box. Well, one of the new things, again, not out yet, but slated to come, is a drop down here to say, what does this first box really search on? By default, this one in beta set up for position title. So I would start typing in like accountant, and it's going to search on position titles and then put in my location of like, Columbus, and search from there. Or I could drop that down and say, well, I want to search on keyword. I want to search on IT skills, language skills. There's going to be some flexibility to what options are in this dropdown. But again, it's just kind of a way for them to have a few options here to dictate what this first search box is kind of looking for. And the second search box is always going to be location. So I'm just going to run one of my recent searches here just as an example and show you the second new component, which are these filters here underneath the main search bar. So prior, as it stands today, actually, and prior to whenever this comes out, again, maybe a December and a January release, all of the filters were kind of banked on this more filters or all filters page. Well, now we'll have the ability to kind of pull some of those out here and give drop down so they can kind of filter these on the fly. And a couple other options is the remote only slider is gonna be able to be parked out here as well if I want to focus on specifically remote jobs. And then also this indication here is like school specific jobs or school kind of organically posted jobs. And so in beta, the little tag for jobs that are posted directly to this site or this school, let's say, is QA sourced. And so that's what this is referring to, is QA sourced only, which would essentially be, okay, I'm just looking at school jobs only, right? I want to filter out any of the external jobs that are fed in, even if they match my search, because I'm looking for something very specific that I know was posted directly to my school. And so this toggle would be available for them to include or exclude those external jobs that would match their search. So that's going to be kind of part of this top bar as well. Again, this is in beta, still kind of in a little bit of a design phase, got to go through testing. But since it was here and I already had a slide on it, figured I would just kind of come in, talk about it a little bit, click around a little bit. So with that, I will kind of hush up for a second and see if anybody has any questions. Feel free to put those into chat, come off mute. Happy to answer anything we talked about or any other questions that you might have.
Aaron?
Yes. Hey, Julia.
It's Julia. I have a question about this staff setup procedure. Yep. So currently, or I think before now, we had the ability, if somebody was already set up in manage users, we could just copy whatever they had in terms of their settings and then create another user.
Correct. Yes.
And that's still there, I think.
Correct. Yes.
So could we do that? And then instead of creating a new user based on it, create a new profile, or not a profile, a new template based on it?
Yeah, so there is still the copy function on your manage users to say, I gave that example of, oh, Daryl here is a career coach. I know he has the right access into the system, so I'm going to use his permissions and whatnot to create a template from. There is still the copy user, which would let you just basically copy those same permissions and PIDs or products to a new person and create, an admin login for them, not necessarily a staff profile. So that still exists. To your point about, can we copy straight from manage users to a template? I don't think that's currently possible, but that's a good idea, because that's basically what I suggested, just without a nice quick button to do so per se. So yeah, great question. I'll probably just go bounce that off of Scott, who was one of the developers that worked on this, and see how he feels about that. Maybe we can make a slight tweak to that new feature and give a function from here to copy this to a template.
Thanks.
Okay, got one coming in chat. Will these new features be turned on automatically? Dave, thank you. So the only feature, Dave answered this in chat, but the only feature that you would need to ask for would be the user access templates that we kind of just described around the staff setup. Everything else we've talked about is on by default. And one other thing, Jennifer, just because I believe I'm right, but I think this was something that you guys may have suggested, but if anybody noticed, I'm in beta again, this is not live yet, but there's a new little icon up here. I'm in as an admin for recently viewed records. And this is basically the last 20 pages in the system that you visited. And you can come in here and go back to any of these pages at any time. And so this would reflect any students I've clicked on, any company records, events, interviews, advising appointments, co-op records. Anytime I click on like a detailed record like that, you can see my staff profiles are in here. I can just click these and go right back to that record. And this functionality is going to be available for admin, students, and employers, and is currently slated to come out on December 5th. So it's still going through testing, but so far so good. I know I've looked at it quite a bit. It seems to work great. So just wanted to point that out. So thank you, Jennifer. Your name itself reminded me of that. Any other questions? Feel free to jump into chat, come off mute. Well, we're always around for questions, so I'll leave you guys with this. Hope everybody has a good holiday. Hopefully you guys all have some time off next week, and we will pick it back up in December, and squeak another webinar in on the 15th. So we'll have some really good stuff there as well, but we'll communicate that out per usual. But yeah, we hope everybody has a good holiday next week, and thanks for jumping on.